So indicators in Deepvue, we've built quite a few of them that are custom and some other ones that are already built in. So if the way it works is at the very top of the charting module, you'll see this, this kind of a trend line, trending icon. And when you hover over it, it will say indicators and strategies. When you click it, this will give you the library of all of the indicators that are available within the platform. Now, one of the things that we get a lot of questions about is, can I port over my TradingView indicators or some other platform, Thinkorswim indicators into Deepvue? That is not a possibility yet, and that's something that we're working towards getting into the platform so that you can custom code kind of anything that you like in terms of fundamentals or technicals, and then have it be an indicator for yourself. Now, there's two types of indicators. There's built-in indicators within the library that exist that you could use, and then there's the DV indicators, which we've created as well. So if I type in DV at the top of the search, all the ones that we've custom created that have been requested by users are all available here. I'll go over some of the basic ones first, and then we'll get into right away into RMV and some of the latest ones that we've created. In my setup, what I tend to use is three of them that I find are very essential and key for my trading. So the first one is the DP relative strength line. So if I go ahead and I'll actually we'll go bare bones here just to give everybody, how to add these things and how to kind of set things up like I do on my DP. So if I go DV dash, I get the DP relative strength line. When you click it, it's going to be added, and what you will see right away is it's added in the same panel is what, the pane is what TradingView, our charting library calls it. And then what you want to do is hover over this, and every indicator you could hover over and you'll see these three settings that show up. You could show and hide the indicator temporarily if you want to be doing that. You could click settings to see the settings that we have for that particular indicator. So we'll mess with this in a few, and then we could get rid of it with this trash icon, or you could click these three dots for more. When you click these three dots, you'll have a full menu that shows up right here. So what I tend to do is I tend to move my relative strength line to a new panel. You could think of these as separate panels within the charting module, and you could click new pane above. And what that will do is it will create a new panel at the top of your charting module, and it will put the relative strength line separated from your price action so that your price action doesn't get really squished. So now I have the relative strength line in a separate panel, and the settings that I tend to use is versus the S&P. So I put, SPY. A lot of people put QQQ as well. It depends on how you look at the markets and what type of markets you're trading. The second setting is line or candlesticks. I tend to use both depending on the situation. So if I'm counting relative strength days or something very doing a study of that sort, I could switch to candlesticks. Most of you will be using line and stick to that. The rest of them are more about the moving average that you want to put on top. So what we define as relative strength phases. So if I put the 21 EMA or SMA, depending on your personal preference, and then we have a lot more, you want to hide the green dot or the pink dot. These are highly specialized, just, is relative strength line making a new high, or is it making a new high before price? And these things will show up as well. We have these crossover indicators where when you cross above and you're exhibiting relative strength on a 21-day basis versus the S&P, you'll have this crossover. I don't tend to use this a lot, so I tend to hide it just to keep the setup very clean. And then you could also mix up the colors as well. So you can, make your lines darker if you like, or thin. You could change the color of what it looks like when you're in a relative strength phase or in a declining phase as well. So that's how I set up the relative strength line. It's at the top. It's separated from my price action, and that keeps the setup really, really easy. The second thing I tend to add is the DV enhanced volume. This now gives me a lot of information while I'm kind of looking at a chart, and it allows me to, separate, good price action from bad price action, essentially by taking a look at how price is doing and then taking a look at how volume is accompanying that price action. So if I take a look at the settings of these or this DV enhanced volume, basically you could set up your moving averages on a daily, weekly, and monthly time frame. You could truncate the volume if you like, so that just logs it out, uh, and then also you could color it based on the previous bar, which is what we got a lot of requests for. The color coding here, with the green, the orange, the up and down is all available. So it's a pocket pivot, reverse pocket pivot. And if you don't know what pocket pivot or reverse pocket pivots are, I would go to YouTube, type in pocket pivot trader line. We have videos on it on the trader line side, or also on the Deepvue side as well in the knowledge base. So that's how I set it up. It shows up as a separate, again, panel at the bottom of the price action, so it doesn't squish anything or it's not overlaying my price here as well. The third one that I'll go over that's key to my setup and how I set things up is the key moving averages. So DV-key moving averages, you add that in, and what it does is it becomes a hub for which moving averages you want to show when you're on intraday charts, so less than daily time frame, which moving averages you want to show on your daily charts, your weekly charts, and your monthly charts. What I love doing on my daily is to have the 10, 21, 50, and sorry about that, 10, 21, and 50 uh, day SMAs. And then I like to make them the traffic light kind of system. So if it's I make the 10-day green, the 21-day orange, and the 50-day red. And that gives me a clear picture of is a stock coming into the 10, 21, or 50. Essentially my system and how I look at the markets is I want to be cautious when stocks are trading below the 50-day. So you can choose to do something similar like that. You have the ability to set them to any color that you like. I actually have a default setting that I have saved. So if I go reset, I am not able to see it because it's a smaller screen, but I have a template set up that I use, which makes these colors, the traffic light system is applied right away. So that's how I set up my charts in Deepvue, and keep it very simple. And I think these three are good ones to start with. Richard, do you see any questions regarding, let's see.
There's a question about chart templates, and that's part of our longer term roadmap. We're kind of focusing on features right now. Other than that, we've got a lot in the pipeline, but I know that's been heavily requested, so we are working towards that. Do you want me to walk through RMV at this point, or was there another one that you wanted to cover first?
No, I think it's a good point to get into some specialized indicators and go over R&B.
Yeah, so yeah, can you add it to your chart just
Yeah.
so we can see it? I've got some tickers that we can use as some good examples. But first things first, on the subject of indicators, you want to use what's useful to your process. You don't want to overload your screen with 8, 10, 20 indicators, even though you can in Deepvue if you want to. There's no limit. You want to use what's useful to you, what helps you interpret price action, what helps you identify actionable buy or sell signals. We've got a lot of different indicators that cover different styles and can help you do just that. And RMV for me is an indicator that's really useful that helps me interpret price action and what it's actually doing. So we know that it's kind of an element of market structure that the market moves in and switches between elements of contraction and elements and times of expansion. And RMV stands for relative measured volatility, and it basically gives an objective measure of is price expanding, is price contracting. When it's closer to 100, when the value of RMV is closer to 100, we're seeing price expansion to the upside or the downside. It just means kind of price is expanding in terms of recent ranges. But when it gets really close to zero, that means that we're getting really tight. It means we're forming a range on that time frame. And if you look here, Rise got the look back period up. This is kind of the key option here for RMV. The actual formulation of RMV is proprietary to us. We developed it, but you can adjust the look back period. And what that basically determines is what is the range of data that you want to use and input into RMV to decide what a normal range looks like. And then from that, RMV can automatically determine, all right, over this range, is the recent price action tight or is it price expansion? I pretty much leave it on the look back period default of 15 by trial and error. That we found that's kind of best for trading and most useful. But there are some circumstances that I like to shorten down to 5, and I'll talk through those in just a minute. But can you bring up, let's do app, just because I think this is a great recent example. So this is a perfect example of price moving from contraction to expansion. We saw, and Ryan, maybe you can point this out. We saw a strong rally off the lows of the recent base, if you want to point that out. And then what happened is price moved up and then contracted right into the moving averages. So we had about 5 days or so of really tight action. And take a look at what RMV did right before the big breakout move that we had on volume recently. So if you go to the last bar there, highlight that RMV went right to 0. So right there, RMV is telling you that price is extremely tight and we could have the potential for a large expansion move either to the upside or downside. It's key that it's not always to the upside, and I'll show an example later that it can be to the downside. But as traders, we're looking for times of large volatility from a tight area where we can manage risk. And that's exactly what RMV gives you. And this has been one of the strongest stocks over the past past 2 weeks or so. Let's see if there's any key questions here. I saw one coming from Kevin. Do we have to change the look back period setting from changing from daily? That's a good question. On a weekly, I do like using 5, but I would suggest to kind of test it out for yourself and what you kind of like. Vikram asks, are we able to add RMV as a scanning filter? Yes, you can scan by RMV, which is amazing. Part of my daily routine is looking for stocks that have RMV 0 that meet some other basic requirement like relative strength or earnings growth. And maybe we'll show later on. Yeah, Ryan, could you just bring up the Deepvue leaders list and X out app and then add RMV as a column there? I have it as my first column here. So yeah, you can also do it. Yep, there we go. So 15 days. So this is how you can add it to your column. And then what I love to do for the Deepvue leaders specifically is I sort by RMV. I can look at price expansion. CEG obviously was one last week that had super strong action, but I like to double click RMV. So like Rye has it set up right now, all the zeros and low numbers are at the top. And then I tab through and see where are the tight areas that also have a strong larger pattern. So Oracle, for example, if you go back up to that one, this is a recent gap. That's another reason to be watching the stock. Enhanced volume highlights the huge volume that's coming in. Volume's declining now as RMV is tightening. So this is definitely a prime swing trade setup for next week, either to expand to the upside or to the downside. And then if there's a tight area that happens up the right-hand side, like we saw with app, upstart a little bit here, this could be more of a position trade type setup, although this name in particular, when it's got such a high ADR and it can really move, I usually treat those more as swing trade performance enhancers. So that's a great question, Vikram, how you can kind of use it in your screening process, and it saves you a lot of time. You're always told that you can't scan for VCPs. Well, in Deepvue you can using RMV, which is super, super awesome. Let's see. I wanted to bring up Duolingo as well. Let's just kind of go through some more examples. Actually, let's stay on docs here for a second. This is a good
Yeah.
example. So let's take a look here and switch it to 5, the period of 5s, because this is a recent gap up, and this is one of the times where I like to switch it to 5, and then zoom into the recent price action just a little bit. You've got 2 key ranges. Adjust the scale so it's expanded up a little bit so it's easier to see the contractions. Perfect. Yeah. So look at the recently after the gap, we saw a range form right there. RMV just kind of flattens because the 5 period look back is going to be a lot more responsive. So there's going to be a lot more moves from 0 to 100, but that highlights the range right there. Then docs went tight for about 4 weeks, you know, bored everybody out of their minds. So that entire time was basically RMV showing you that we had a nice tight range. Then we kind of expanded down a little bit, formed another tight range. We saw RMV dip pretty low. If you go back a few days, I'm talking about the range right before the outside day. Yeah, so it didn't get all the way down to 0, but under 15 is kind of where I start to draw the line as it's tightening, especially when there's a really sharp drop off like that. And then we expanded it up a little bit, so that would have been a good buy point right there on that outside day. So we expanded up, formed another tight range, RMV went to 0, and then we had the recent explosion. So docs is a really good example. And let's bring up just a bunch of them. So let's talk through Reddit. Let's bring that up and switch the look back period back to 15 because I only use 5 for recent IPOs, forming their IPO bases, and then recent gap ups, as well as kind of more volatile stocks. So Reddit has been forming this consolidation. And look, right before this recent move, we had an RMV 0 signal. So it coincided with a pullback into the moving averages. This is up the right-hand side. RMV showed you it was tight. It would show up on your screens that day. And the next day we have a nice push higher, a retest of that range high, and then we explode higher and expand higher. This is what RMV is designed to do. It's designed to get you looking at charts that are contracting in a way that you can have an explosive move higher like this, which allows you to manage risk easier because you're immediately at a profit, all of that. So that's Reddit. Let's bring up Cart. Actually, you had this up earlier, and I actually want to bring that up. This is definitely one that's been acting well.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you act Cart, so RMV tight signal right before the expansion up again, up the right-hand side. So if you go, yep, there's a range there that it highlights as it declines, but also right there, those 3 tight days, that's what we're looking for. And you have an upside reversal in there too at the end. And then what do we get? We get an expansion higher. So that's definitely a good one. Let's bring up Duolingo.
Issues with global search.
Yeah. So this one, we might have actually gone through this one already. No, there's just a similar one. Yeah, it looks very similar to
looks
app.
similar to
Yeah, to app. Yeah. So we have an expansion off lows again. If you could point that out, Rye. So this is like a textbook way to use RMV. Is you look for a stock that's basing, you look for one that's had a powerful move off lows, and then pulls back to the moving averages, forms a range, and look at the RMV tight signal of 0 right before this expansion. If you could highlight that, look at that. Goes to 0 right before the explosive breakout through this tight consolidation pivot. So this is a great example. Bring up VNO. This is actually just to show that it's not just growth names that work with RMV. This has been a really good swing trade opportunity. We had a similar pullback into the moving averages, tight range, and then you've got, it kind of identifies the pivot for you, and then you get an explosive move up. Let's bring up TEM. And for explosive moves, again, I like to use RMV look back period of 5.
Give me a second. We
Yeah,
probably
no problem.
or something because
Yeah, let me see if there's any questions here. Where would you place a stop loss? Because you've got a tight range, you can place your stop below the range, or on the day that it's breaking out through the top of the range that you identified, you could use a stop at that low of the day. So TEM, yeah, showed that tight range. RMV highlighted this perfectly. And
yeah, I just want to add something here. So like
sure.
now that we know, when we know that, okay, we have a look back period on gap ups of 5 and then on non-gaps, consolidations of 15. So once we know that it's tightening relative to itself, we can look at a few things to kind of determine risk. One would be, especially when they make a higher low, like when they consolidate and there's a higher low, then you can have multiple stops. Let's say you put on an oversized position, it breaks the low of this day, you kind of cut back a little bit, but then it breaks a low of that day, then you got to get out because what you were anticipating was that this thing is getting tight and it's going to rip up, to the upside. And if it's not doing that, if it's breaking the prior day low and then eventually the major low, then you want to get out because your thesis is kind of like it's voided. What you anticipated didn't happen, so you got to get out at that point. So you can use ATR, ADR to say, hey, this stock normally trades in a 3 to 5% range on a 15-day basis, right? And then set your stops according to that range. So it really depends on a per stock basis. I would use the major low. So if it's RMVs going to zero right about here, my top, my get, I'm gonna cut 100% of my position if it breaks to around 37. I will scale back a little bit if it breaks around 38 because my what I'm trying to see is that, hey, I need to break this to the upside so I can make money. Now, if you're trying to go short, you do the opposite, right? Your buy stop on a short would be to the top side. And then when it breaks down below these prior lows, that's when you start making money. So it's just the flip side if you're trying to do RMV with short, going short in a downtrend for a market. But that's a really good question. That's defining risk. It all depends on the type of stock you're dealing with as well.
Yeah, that's the most important question. Bring up ASTS because this is another good example of actually it being tight and then expanding to the downside recently. But prior to that, you had a lot of good signals to the long side as well. So switch this to 5. So because this is such a powerful mover and really volatile name, I often like to change the look back period to 5. It's going to give more oscillations up and down. But if you go through a chart of ASTS and zoom in and look at every time RMV went to 0 or extremely low, you'll notice how it's contracting and you'll kind of see how RMV is working. So if you just kind of follow this move from start to finish, maybe Rye just highlight a few of the RMV's tight areas because this has been expanding, contracting, expanding, contracting. It's been kind of a textbook
So yeah,
example.
like Richard said, you get the gap. You want to be on the 5 at that point because it's a
Yep.
huge gap in price. And then you can see that it's kind of, RMV dies down. The stock is now tight based on the 5-day move that it's made. So it could be a pivot right around, the top side pivot you would put right here. And
Right.
then it rips up through that. Then we have another gap, like a huge move. You still stay on the 5 setting. And then it, comes down, RMV's 0, right, in that zone. So now you have another pivot that's building, and then you keep doing that. And then it goes up. We get the RMV of 0. We have another consolidation. It continues higher. This one was just too good.
It just does it over and over. Like I mean, it's a high tight flag setup when it
Yeah,
gets up here. But look, there's like a tight range right after this. Just go forward. Yeah, right there.
right
Look
there.
how tight and look at the volume. So you want to pair a tight area with declining volume, RMV going to 0, and that can yield just explosive moves. And this has been the stock to use it as example. And Leif, who are doing a masterclass on high tight flags, his buy points almost always line up with an RMV tight 0 area. So it's funny how
And
everything
and
comes
going
together.
back to the risk question, like your stops would be, this range is now formed. The stop would be the low of this day because if it breaks that low, the RMV is going to go up because there you'll see expansion to the downside. That's when you say, okay, whatever I was thinking is wrong. I need to cut my loss right about
Yeah,
that.
show current action, and we can use that as an example.
Yeah,
Because recently it was forming a tight range on the right side of a base. Zoom in like all the way and expand up so they can really see
yeah.
the change. So it was forming a tight area, and I was watching this to the long side. But what did we do Friday? We expand to the downside. So a stock can move either way from a tight area. Usually it moves in the direction of the trend, but that's not always the case. So you just have to be. It's not some magic thing. It's just showing that there is a tight contraction, and that there's potential for a big move. You always have to manage risk. You always have to judge everything for yourself. Let's see. I see some questions. Should the tight area be near a moving average? Yes, ideally, because otherwise you're not buying at a logical spot on a larger pattern context wise. So you want to put everything in your favor. You want to buy near an area of support. You want to buy whether that's a moving average, anchored VWAP, whatever you're using. You want the tight area to occur in a spot where there's high potential for a big move. And if a stock has already made a big move and it's short-term extended above the moving averages, if it forms a tight area as kind of app is doing right now, if you want to bring up app again, uh, it could still work, but there's less potential for a big move already. You don't have to bring up app if you don't want to. That's pretty much all the names I want to run through. Um, how is
Awesome.
RMV calculated? It's proprietary. It's something that's completely unique to Deepvue. You can screen by it. You can uh, use it as a chart indicator, as we showed, but we're not going to share how it's calculated. That's our secret sauce. So I think that's it. Anything else with RMV that you wanted to cover, Rye?
No, that's all I had. We are running into some issues here. Maybe my internet. Let's see. No, I got good internet. You check on your side.
Yeah, I'm live. You wanted me to share?
Yes.
Let's see. Let me. Do you see that?
Sorry, I'm on like one screen. Yeah, I see. I
No
see.
problem. All right. What did you want to show?
I wanted to go over some of the recent ones that we've added
Hmm.
into the platform.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of requests for the Larry Williams blast off, which was recently added to the platform.
Hmm.
Um, that's a good one. We'll have documentation on that and plus videos out on it shortly. Um, we also added the TTM squeeze. There's an update coming for the TTM squeeze to make it even better
Hmm.
next week. So we'll be adding that. Are there any suggestions in the chat as to um, which ones you guys would want to see or something that you feel is missing in the platform? We're more than happy to add those in. Um, but the ones that I did want to go over,
Marketing and Navigator is a good one. I can go over
yeah,
that
let's
quick
go
if you
over the
want.
market navigator and how we've done
Yes,
that, and then we could go over stage analysis right after.
sure. So Market Navigator, it basically is plotting different buy and sell signals on the chart for you. This helps with buys. This helps with position management. It helps you collect evidence that a stock is under accumulation. So you can basically, once you add this to your chart, you can choose the buy signals that show up. You can choose the sell signals that show up. You can see a list. A lot of them have to do with the key moving averages, crosses above or below, the 21 EMA, the 50 SMA, the 200 SMA, whether it's accumulation day, a higher high, a key reversal bar, or a distribution day falling off, or on the sell side, very similarly, crosses below the moving averages, distribution days, lower lows, that type of thing. So these two happen to be kind of the ones that I use. And this kind of helps me define my market cycle when I have this plotted on a chart of an index like the QQQ to define when we're starting an uptrend and ending an uptrend. And just like everything, you can style it. I've got it set as the arrows, but if you want to make it a little bit more obvious, you can do the triangles up. You could do diamond, whatever you want. Rye, just curious, what's your favorite? You like circles, right?
Yeah, I put the arrows or the dots, and then I really like I've been adding it to my market monitor thing that I've been building. So
Yep.
like when it gets above the 21 day, you get a clear signal on the S&P.
Yep.
I'm talking about the market navigator. So like it makes it easier. It's kind of like our first step to making something like this, and we want to improve it to so that users can input their own signals that they like and make the moving averages a little more dynamic so that not everybody's looking at the 21 day or the 50 day. Some people might want some other MAs in there. So that's kind of the next step.
Yeah, I mean, if we look at the market cycle before this, it basically turned on, crossed above the 21 EMA here, and kind of got you in that whole market cycle until we crossed below the 21 EMA. And this is really good for individual stocks as well. If we bring up NVIDIA, let's bring that up. Again, you start within the base. If we showed RMV, let me actually show RMV here. We identified the tight areas here. We just had the cycle turn on here. It kept you in all the way into this point. So it really helps you kind of capture those longer term trends. There's going to be ups and downs, false signals with every indicator there is those. You just have to take everything in context. But Market Navigator super powerful, especially if you go ahead and, select these ones that you actually use in your rules, and then you've kind of got an objective measure of your rules, and that can be really important. Um, you can change this from individual signals to combination of signals, and that just means more signals have to be active at the same time for it to show up on the charts. But I personally just like turning it onto individual signals and kind of have each one as its stand on its own merit. Anything else that you like to use this one for, Rye?
No, I think it's a good first step. If you guys have any ideas on how we can improve it, definitely we will do that. We just wanted to get out the first iteration so that we can get ideas from our users.
Yeah, with everything, please let us know your feedback, because then we can add more features, we can add improvements. So treat everything that we add as something that you can customize to your own liking, and send us feature requests. We'd love to hear that. We want this to be your platform, so please go ahead and do that. Let me go ahead and bring up the stage analysis. Let's see. I'm blind. There we go. What stock? You want to do NVIDIA weekly?
Yeah, we with the stage analysis indicator, what I like to do is have it behind my relative strength line.
Yeah,
So
I'll set that up.
it yeah,
So
it gives me a lot of information at once while I'm flipping through charts. So
yeah, to add that, just so everybody can follow along at their own pace, you'd also want to add, of course, the relative strength line to your charts. You want to make sure this relative strength line is moved to a new pane above. And then you can, in your object tree, let me move my drawings here. You can go ahead. Where's my stage analysis? I'll bring up the object tree here. We can go ahead and stage analysis and move it up, move it up. I got a lot of drawings here. Move it up to that same pane so it's located behind that relative strength line. So it keeps the chart a little bit cleaner. And Ryan, any other reason that you like to do that, I guess?
no, it just gives me, one relative strength phase if the stock is, outperforming the S&P on a 21-day basis or not. And second, what stage is it in with respect to, Stan Weinstein's system? When those two things align, especially when you're in the relative strength phase and you're in a stage 2 or an early stage 2A, right? Th those combined with, tight areas, consolidation, but pivots, kind of the bread and butter type of setup.
Yeah, and the stage analysis phases, stage 4 is going to be highlighted in red. Then as we get more towards stage 1, it's going to kind of lighten in color, and then ultimately during the stage 2 uptrends, transition over to green. So it's a really nice kind of color-coded way to make sure that you're trading with the trend and trading with the longer-term trend. So highly recommend this. It will switch over to yellow when there's some signs of stage 3 type action happening, but it'll kind of retransition into stage 2 at the important moments if we do kind of continue on with the strong trend. Let's bring up SMCI as another example here. This one has had some monster moves and just recently transitioned into stage 4 on the week that it broke these moving averages and broke below this base. So this can help you avoid those big sell-offs, those disastrous stage 4 trends. Well, let's bring up ELF. I think this is another example of a recent stage 4. We've been in a stage 2 for quite some time, starting all the way back in June of 2022. Super strong action. And then recently we're transitioning over to stage 4. I think CELH is another good example. It's flopped back and forth a little bit, but we're transitioned into a stage 4 on this week here. So again, helping you escape hopefully these, very serious drawdowns and trends down, while helping you, take advantage of the strong stage 2 action here. And this is also scannable. You can, have this as a requirement to be in a stage 2. Yeah, just a really powerful and handy indicator that can be used both for screening as well as obviously as an indicator on your charts. All right.
Awesome.
Were there any requests for indicators that people wanted us to go over?
Yeah, I'm taking a look now. Does Stage only work on weekly? Stage analysis works both on the daily time, when you're on the daily time frame and also the weekly. So it's
Yep.
enabled on both. We need to get a little bit better about disabling things that, it also works on intraday right now, but we made it that way, but it causes more confusion than anything else. RMB, wouldn't it be easier to have both a positive and a negative value for RMB? The way we've set up RMB right now is 0 is when it's the tightest based on the look back period, and 100 is when it's the least tight in that look back period. So there's no positive or negative. It's 0 is the tightest and 100 is the least tight.
Yeah. On expansion bars like this or expansions up, it's going to be going to 100, but also on expansion down, it's going to be go to 100 because it's just telling you about expansion versus contraction, not negative expansion versus positive expansion. You can see on the chart if it's negative or positive.
How do I save my chart setup once I make changes? Richard, if you want to just go to the load layout and like how you can create and save changes to your layout here, that should be
Yeah. So
quick.
once you create a layout, your changes will kind of be saved as the last state, but you can also go ahead and make a copy and then save a particular chart layout as a particular name. I would also highly recommend, and this is kind of what I do, is I save an indicator template of my setup. So I've got a bunch of different indicator templates based on different time frames, but you can go over here to indicator template and say I want to save this current state as a particular, key template that I want to be able to load in just a few clicks. You can click this here, click Save Indicator Template. We'll name this tutorial. I have a lot of templates named as tutorial because I've done a lot of tutorials. We'll just call it SEP. You can have it remember the symbol that you're on or the interval. This is helpful if you're creating a chart template, say for a 15-minute time frame or a weekly time frame or a daily time frame, and when you click it, you always want to load that time frame. You want to go ahead and select remember interval. We'll go ahead and do that, and you can see the listed indicators that will be a part of this, and then clicking save. This is now saved, and if I switch over to another indicator template, and then I can go ahead and click tutorial SEP, and it will immediately load that template that I just set up. And how I have it kind of configured is I have a 15-minute time frame layout. I've got a 65-minute, which splits the days into 6. I've got a 195-minute time frame layout, and then I've got a market monitor template that I kind of use with stage analysis to analyze key indexes, and then I've got kind of my go-to daily template. So instead of using these to change timeframes, I'm actually usually using the indicator templates to do that. And the benefit for that is I can see my daily moving averages on an intraday time frame because when I switch to a 15-minute chart, I have it configured so that this purple line here is the appropriate period to show the daily moving average equivalent on the 15-minute time frame by multiplying the number of bars that show up on a 15-minute time frame by 21. I can get this period number, and basically it's a big number, 526, but this is the daily moving average equivalent. So even when I'm on an intraday chart, I can see where that key level is, and see how price is building versus that level if I'm watching a reclaim, pullback, what have you. And I find that really, really useful. I've made an entire tutorial on how to plot daily moving averages on intraday timeframes. So go ahead and search our YouTube or knowledge base for that, and it should pop up. But these indicator templates, super helpful. I've also got one which shows the GMMA charts. Let's go over to a daily. This is basically just using a lot of moving averages to define the trend. And again, it can help you be really objective whether we're starting a new uptrend or starting a downtrend. and then riding the big meat of the moves. We're not trying to catch all the wiggles and jiggles, as Stan Weinstein would say, but we're trying to, catch these longer term trends. And that's what the GMMA charts are really good at showing very simply, are we red above white space above blue, or are we at blue above white space above red? Are we in an uptrend or are we in a downtrend? So this is another quick template that I have loaded, and it can be used on daily charts or also on the weekly time frame as well, to capture basically those longer term weekly trends that allow us to profit really nicely. Let's go to NVIDIA here to show that. You can see the weekly red, white, blue pattern where red's above white, above blue started all the way back in January 2023, and it's still in a red, white, blue pattern. We had a little bit of a test during this base, but so far the longer term weekly picture looks pretty much the same, but we'll of course have to see what happens. Anything else you think we should mention here? Any other questions to that? Let me see here.
I answered most of them. There were a few questions on can you screen on Market Navigator, like the signals that Market Navigator spits out are their equivalent scans. That's a good idea. Um, Scott says, which you guys did chart presets. That's going to be a huge focus. Uh, that's coming up for us. Uh, we will move to a charting system first, and then we will implement that.
Yeah, I see a question about putting the 5-day moving average on 30 minutes. So let me do a quick example of that actually, if you don't mind, Rye.
Mhm.
So say you're on a daily time frame and you have a 5-day moving average. So let's just change this to from a 200-day to a 5, and let's change the style away from grayscale. Let's make this orange, make it thick just to show it. And let me delete this VWAP here. Okay, so we've got the 5-day moving average, this orange line here. I know Brian really likes to show this moving average on intraday timeframes. So basically what you'd want to do is, and you use as an example, the 30-minute time frame. You basically want to remember that it's a 5 period, and you'd want to go over to a 30-minute time frame. And this is still showing the 5-day, the 5 period moving average, but on a 30-day, on a 30-minute chart. That's not what we want. We want the daily equivalent of that moving average. So there are 390 minutes in a trading day. I'll do calculator because I'm a retired engineer and I don't know how to do math in my head anymore.
Retired engineer at 27.
So we do 390 divided by the time period that you're using. So 30 minutes divided by 30. That means that there are 13 bars on the 30-minute chart that make up an entire day. So what we have to do is multiply 13 times 5. And let me do that again. 65. Can't do that math in my head anymore. Used to be able to do Laplace transforms. Can't do simple multiplication. But we'll go ahead and edit this period to be the 65 period. And there we go. Now this is basically the daily 5-period moving average equivalent on a 30-minute time frame. And then you could go over here and save indicator template and have this be 30 min or something like that, and click remember interval, save that, and then whenever you want to load the 30-minute chart with the 5-day moving average, as well as any indicators that you want to specifically show on your intraday chart, you can go ahead and find that indicator template. You can star it so it shows up here, and then it's quick, easy access to switch between those and have the appropriate indicators loaded. Hopefully that answers your question, but let me know if there's any follow-ups.
Yeah, what we will also do is update the key moving averages indicator for you to do that math on the fly. I will check where that's at, but that's definitely been talked about, so that is done for the user.
Yeah,
Right
and
away.
it'd be nice if we could define in that 65 period versus hourly versus, so we can do the appropriate period, because it's not always exactly the same. Um, all right. I may be doing a blast off tutorial next week, so I don't think we need to cover that today. Let's see. Do you want to do earnings line and sales line?
Yeah, we could do those, or there's a few questions on if you have any RMV screens, if you want to share the links to those in the Zoom chat. Like which ones you're running on a daily basis, or
Yeah, so I have some presets made. There's the tight range screen, which looks for RMV, but I usually use RMV as a sort rather than a screen, because I want to make sure that a stock meets a certain criteria, such as relative strength, um, or earnings growth, or what have you. And then you can see right here, it's my leftmost column. So whatever screen I'm looking at, I usually, as part of my daily routine, and let me clear the sort here. I was sorted by something else. Basically, there we go. Yeah, there's some bug going on, right? But anyway, I like to sort by RMV here, and then just kind of tab through based on price tightness, and have that be kind of my go-to way to go through different screens. But that's a good question. Let me go. Oh, let's go over to NVIDIA. Oh, can't
yeah,
spell.
I ran into that as well. The team's taking a look at it.
Yeah, there we go. So let's go over to a weekly chart. So this is my weekly stage analysis template. So again, instead of going over to weekly using these buttons, I have a weekly chart template set up with the 10 week, with the I forget this, if this is the 30 or the 40 week, but immediately in one click, I can load my preferred weekly view. And let's go ahead and add the DV earnings line, and you can do the sales line as well. You can see basically now that this is plotted. And just to be clear, you have to be on a weekly chart to see this. It's not going to work on a daily chart, because this is about the longer term view of a company. So that's why we're using a weekly chart. But clicking the settings, you can show earnings per share, and it's plotted on its own scale. You can do growth as well if you want to see that view. I like doing earnings per share. You can turn on or off the estimates. I like keeping the estimates off just to see what's currently being plotted. And you can change it from TTM to non-TTM if you'd like to. We'll keep TTM on. Just the styling if you would like to. You could change this from a line to, say, a histogram if you want to see that view, or an area. That could be kind of cool. And adjust the opacity down. Again, you can kind of make it your own, and make sure that when you want to reference it, you can easily understand it. But when you're focusing on price action, you don't want it to be in the way. But we'll go ahead and leave it as a line here. And basically what this allows you to do is judge the fundamentals of a company right along with the price action. And you can see, early on this year, the earnings line just went, you know, uh, it went up and to the right, super strong, and that's what's driven all this price action. So, reading the fundamental trends like this is super helpful right along with the price action. And then, of course, in Deepvue, you can take a look at, the estimates, and, see quite some time in the future as well, see how they've been revised, acceleration versus deceleration. There's a lot that you can do here in Deepvue with regards to earnings or sales that you can't do in any other platform.
Yeah,
So this is super cool.
there's a
Go ahead.
question on if it can include estimates if you want to toggle the estimates.
Yeah. Right
Um,
now, it plots them on kind of an abbreviated scale, so it might look um, artificially like it's just taking a rocket ship, but each of these points is another quarter. So you have to kind of think out the slope that it would be if it was on the same scale. And we'll be working on that to make that better. But you can definitely show estimates, and you can see, of course, the scale over here showing the earnings here, and Nvidia's just been on fire. Any other really good examples of for earnings line, Rye, that come to mind? Any stocks?
Prior ones like Uber is one I traded for like 80-90% move. It became positive for the first time, saw the highest earnings ever. Um, that
This day,
was a good
right?
one.
This earnings.
Yes. You want to do a trailing 12 month? What setting do you have on?
Yeah, this is trailing 12 month.
Okay. Sure.
So I can
Yeah.
turn it off. Yep.
Uh, but it had the highest. Yeah, it went positive for. Is it annual at the bottom? Can you go to quarterly?
Yep.
On your stats table. Yeah.
Yep.
This was
Absolutely.
one that caught my eye and something I've been studying. If you see, 2023 Q1, it had the first positive quarter, and then it did, it turned profitable on a per share basis, which fueled this run in the stock. So I traded this. This you pulled up Palantir. It's the same kind of story on Palantir, but Uber had the same thing.
Oh, I'll go
So
back to Uber. My bad.
yeah,
Yep.
I traded that run. Do you have the growth percentages is what you're plotting, or you're plotting the EPS?
This is plotting just the line, but I can do the growth percentages as well.
Yeah, but both of those are available. I think Uber is a good example to study. A lot of the smaller companies like CELH and things like that had huge runs, had really massive estimates. That's why you want to pay a lot of attention to that. We're going to get guidance data into the platform in Q4 added, and that will likely also make it to the stats table, and you can screen for it, and it will be part of the earnings line and sales lines. So that will be added as well. But estimates, you want to pay attention, and the first positive quarter, if it's not making any money on a per share basis, and then it starts making money, institutions pay a lot of attention to that. So
You can also look for breakouts in the earnings line itself, and you can see that that happened with SMCI. It was already trending nicely, but before the big move that everybody talks about, we had a breakout in the earnings right here. So a stock like that should be on your radar, uh, and because earnings and sales, that's what really drive a stock's move. So this is really powerful. And of course, we've also got the sales line. We'll bring that up. And I kind of want to see these lines going together, right? I don't know if you watch one or the other, but I like seeing them kind of, act together and support each another's moves. Just because earnings growth is great, but you want it to be supported by revenue growth as well. Is kind of how I view things. All right, we've got 4 more minutes. Any other key questions that you see?
Love the RS line with stage analysis. So will there be separate guidance line? Yes, we will have a separate guidance line in the platform when we integrate the guidance data. And our guidance data will be through S&P Global. So that will be awesome. Is there any indicator that helps identify market cycle? So I was actually thinking of that this morning. We we will have an indicator. I will start working on that today. It's almost like why haven't I thought of it already? And what we will do is basically have it increment based on a move above the 21 day, and then it will cycle up. And then when it's below the 21 day, it will cycle down. We'll make it a histogram, positive, negative, and then we'll put in, where do you want to mark your stress tests? I think that will be amazing. It's a pretty easy one to build as well. I don't know why I just didn't think of it before. Um, we'll definitely do that. It's on my list today. Let's see. Is it possible to export a template to share with others? We don't have the capability yet to share charts back and forth. It looks like that's something really popular to be working on. Can you use MACD RSI instead of MAs for the market indicator? We don't have that flexibility just yet in the market indicator, but we will turn on the fact that you could use any MA that you define as your buy signal or sell signal, and we'll have defaults built in as to what we think is best, our best settings for that. A lot of questions, Richard. They want your templates. Uh, um, KME also KMA is also seen on weekly charts. Yes, KMA is also seen on weekly. You could configure that indicator to be, have all your intraday, daily, weekly, and monthly moving averages all set up in one indicator. Thanks. Okay. Instead of a separate line is yes. All great suggestions. How do you put a dot on the chart in RMV? If you want to
Yeah,
go over the technical patterns real quick.
yeah, that's a great one to talk through. So this is a specialized indicator that basically has a lot of patterns built in that you can identify. We've got open equals high, low, inside days, outside days, reversals, slingshot from Scotland, 3 weeks tight, ants, power trend, power three. Basically, here you want to check the ones that you want. And in addition to the RMV indicator, you can basically plot a dot when we have a tight area. So let's do 15 period look back, RMV less than 5, and let's go to app here on a daily chart. Oh, I switched to the other chart template, so I got to add that back. Technical patterns, undo all these, and there you go. So now when RMV gets below that threshold that you set, it will plot a dot here for you. So again, super cool and helps you identify those tight areas without even needing this indicator on the chart. And Ryan, it looks like we have to hop in just a minute. So
Yeah.
hopefully this has been helpful to you guys. Please reach out if you have any questions to support. We're happy to help you out. And thanks so much for tuning in and spending part of your Saturday with us. We hope you have a great
It's
rest of your
nine
weekend.
o'clock.
Great question. Next to my EPS and sale lines, I'm getting a red exclamation, runtime error. So EPS and sales lines work on weekly charts only. If you add EPS and sales on your daily, they won't show up and it will leave you in a state of confusion. So just be aware of that. And that's why we want to move to kind of our own charting. That way we can control the experience a lot better. But EPS and sales work only on weekly or more in terms of time. Let's end it there.
Yeah, thanks so much, guys, and yeah, take care. Bye.